I'm really honored, and iLead College Kolkata welcomes you, and I cordially invite you for this program.
Thank
See,
you.
I met you physically in 2019, and 3 years down the line, we are on a virtual mode.
That's right.
So students who have already joined, for your information, let us all welcome Mr. Aditya Seth, who is the founder and course director, Indian Academy of Shorts. Based out of Mumbai and Delhi, India, Aditya Seth is an internationally acclaimed, independent, award-winning documentary, short, television, advertising, corporate filmmaker, and academic with a sound grounding in theater and music, and has been involved in the making of short films, advertising, corporate films, documentaries, and TV programs in all genre for national as well as international audiences. He is the founder and course director of the Indian Academy of Shorts, which is based out of Noida. He has mentored, supervised, and executed over 250 student films and productions in the discipline of fiction film making, news broadcast, advertising, documentary, and radio programs. He is course director for the Shift Focus, a school for cinema and life. He has got a huge career with him, which has been continued, I think, for the last maybe 35, 37 years. Sir can rectify me. But one thing I would like to talk about him, which made us feel really good when I personally met him, he's a baritone. He said in that seminar that I don't require a microphone, where we were all on the microphones, we were giving our speeches, lectures, presenting papers. Sir stood up and said, I don't need a microphone. And truly, we found he's a baritone. So please pay your attention to this baritone man. And he would be ideally sharing his wonderful expertise, his kind of experience and knowledge with you. And I'm sure you can utilize that in your near future. So, sir, the session is all yours. Please take it up from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for your kind words. And the reason that I don't need a microphone is primarily because of my training in theater. In theater, we are taught this thing called stage volume. So we are taught to speak to the last person in an auditorium without using a microphone. And I think I've kind of continued with that over the years. Yeah, I mean, you know, when I'm live, I rarely need to use a microphone. Okay. Thank you so much for your kind words and that warm welcome. The first thing before I get into narrative and understanding fiction, short fiction, and so on and so forth, let's just try and contextualize this whole thing. And let me just set the tone for how I'll be doing this. I'll give a brief introduction and an understanding of the territory we are in. And as we go along, I will show you 3 films in all. So we can either do a question answer and a discussion as we go along, keeping it interactive, or we can do it all in the end as you feel it should be done, ma'am. I'm fine either ways. So if whoever has a question to ask immediately, they can probably put it in the chat box, so they can, you know, write it down so that they don't forget what the question is, and then we can take it from there as we go along. Is that fine, ma'am? Basically, what are we talking about? We're in a market-driven industry. All entertainment, information, films, television, advertising, corporates, web series these days, everything is on the web. We're all in a market-driven industry, which has already gone more or less digital, going completely digital, and we are hooked to our smartphones all the time. So everything is in our phones. Our attention spans are low. We are all, you know, I feel that as a society, we're in a collective ADHD space, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, where within every 20 seconds, we are engaging with a different message, or we are engaging with a different visual, or with a different piece of information that is coming at us. So WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, I mean, and whatever you kids use these days, have replaced letters, telegrams, newspapers, magazines. Nobody reads papers anymore. Nobody reads magazines anymore. Television, radio, and even cinema. You know, I mean, thanks to COVID, you know, cinema halls are shut half the time, and so we don't necessarily. I've not been to a cinema hall, I think, in nearly 2 years now. It's been a long time. So everything is being consumed online, which is in a way a good thing because thanks to COVID, the online space has opened up tremendously. There's a huge requirement of content. And when I say content, I mean films, I mean entertainment, and I mean information. All of it all comes together as content. And appointment viewing is on its way out. We no longer wait to watch a particular program or a particular film at a particular time. It's primarily because television is also kind of losing its sheen. Not that it's completely out of vogue, but it is losing its sheen. And we always have catch-up TV. You can always watch whatever you want online now. So you don't necessarily have to sit in front of a television at an appointed time or go into cinema hall at an appointed time because most of the films eventually are ending up in the online space. Many films today are being premiered in the online space. So much so, last year, all the films which were nominated for the Oscars were completely in virtual mode. We watched all the films in an online space. So things are changing. The market is changing. The way we monetize our content is changing. Everything is dependent on the number of views. They determine the monetization of content. YouTube has changed the entire paradigm, and today there are many wannabe YouTubes which we have. So the whole thing is about consumption and hashtags and viral videos and constantly vying for our attention and are giving TRPs and box office revenues a run for their money because TRPs and box office revenues have kind of stopped being as important as they used to be. Today, porn, subversive propaganda, gaming, virtual reality have become mainstream. These things were kind of not so much in the consumption space openly and brazenly as they are today. Web series are going interactive. We already seen there was this show on Netflix about this gaming thing which became very popular, which is basically about an interactive game which was converted into a show. And we are constantly vying for our attention and are giving, web series are going interactive. And eventually, I feel it's probably happening already in certain places. Apps will allow the consumer to either dictate the narrative or create their own stories. I think that's where we are going eventually, where there will be gaming and entertainment will kind of fuse and synergize at some level, allowing us to create our own narratives. That I really think is going to be a big thing coming up. It's already happening in the gaming space. I'm sure it will happen in the entertainment space also as we go along. So this basically is where we are at. We're in a hybrid kind of a situation where there is also offline, but more and more online consumption is happening. So somewhere I feel the content that we're creating, the films that we're making are going to be determined by the way we consume the content. So the consumer is absolutely, he's king or she's queen, whoever is consuming whatever, the way they are consuming it. People are watching things in the smartphone now. You don't even need a computer. And India is one of the few countries which has gone straight into the digital telephony generation without, most people are smartphone literate, but they're not computer literate. We have a huge population in this country, which is only smartphone literate. So everything they consume is on smartphones. Computers are not necessarily needed anymore. And because of all the apps, everything is an app today. So this is the territory we're in. And thanks to COVID, like I said, a lot of online content has come up and it's only burgeoning. And kids like you are only consuming online. So you're kind of setting the tone for the future of content and the way content is going to be consumed. Now, when we talk about content, what is content? Content comes from narrative. Now, what is narrative? Narrative is a sequence of connected events, whether real or fictional. The definition of narrative is the same as that of a story. So we're in the realm of storytelling. Everything is a story, right? Our lives are stories. Life around us is a story. How we engage with somebody becomes a story, or how somebody engages with us becomes a story. And our observation of life as it goes along, are all stories. Everything, whatever you see, you reflect on, you ponder with, you engage with, at some level is a story, right? And there are many types of narratives. In non-fiction, you have documentary journalism, memoir, biography. I believe some of you have made such films or have engaged with such films. And fiction, such as prose, drama, some forms of poetry, songs, video games, so on and so forth. Yeah. And what is the dramatic narrative? Dramatic narrative. What is cinema? First, let's just step back a bit. I just want to put the fundamentals out there so that there is no confusion. at all as we go along, because then I'll be kind of skipping and jumping from concept to concept. A dramatic narrative primarily is based on theatre. Earlier, when there was no cinema, there was theatre, there were plays, there were performances, all live with no recording medium. So the camera became a recording medium, and all plays were three-act structure, right? There's a premise, then there's a conflict, and then there's a resolution. That's how drama is created, and which is why it is called a dramatic narrative. And then the moment the camera came in or was invented, of course, originally when the camera came in with the Lumiere brothers, I'm sure most of you know that, were cinema students, there was no distinguishing factor between fiction and non-fiction. It was only documenting life as it went along. You know, the Lumiere brothers made a film called Arrival of a Train, then they made a film called Factory Workers. And some interesting things happened then. The first time Arrival of a Train was shown in a cinema hall in Paris, most people got up and ran away because they thought that the train is going to overrun them. It was so real because they'd never seen anything of the kind. Motion pictures were unheard of at that time. But slowly, the power of the camera and the power of the medium was discovered by people, and they started then documenting or making dramatic films, making fictionalized films. So the plays started getting shot, and the plays were shot like film. So slowly but surely, as the cameras became smaller, and as things became easier to deal with, the dramatic films also came into being. And today, that's the realm that I'm going to be discussing with you. Is primarily dramatic narrative, a narrative, like I said, based on dramatic stories. And all dramatic narratives are primarily about a protagonist, a male or a female or a transgender or an animal, a machine, a ghost, whatever. There's always a protagonist. There's always a central character, right? And this character has a journey. And the journey goes from point A to point Z. I'll just share one small, really terrible drawing. Forgive me for that, but just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Can you all see this? Am I sharing right? Can you see this?
Yes, sir.
All right. So basically, this is a graph which we always draw as we start writing our films, right? So it's basically point A is where the protagonist starts his or her journey, and they move along, and at point Z is the culmination. Now, every time they go along the graph, something or somebody will come and conflict their progression. It'll come in and stop them from going ahead. Let's take the most basic of examples. Boy wants girl, right? Another boy wants girl, or girl wants boy. Either way, so you can switch the genders. This is not a gender-specific example I'm giving here. And somebody says, no, you can't get him or you can't get her. I want him or I want her. So that's the first thing that we call a dramatic high point or a plot point. So that determines the drama. It's always how the journey of the character, our main protagonist, is stopped or hindered by somebody or something is what creates drama. So there's always a thesis versus an antithesis, what we call a hero or a villain. Of course, today films are getting more and more gray. So we don't really have any purely white characters or purely black characters. The biggest example, of course, is Ramayana. Most of our stories are based on the Ramayana. Fortunately and unfortunately, conventional cinema always had very whiter than the whitest heroes and the blacker than the blackest villains. And those things are now changing. They don't necessarily hold true anymore. But as we that in the grays, there is always less gray and more gray, more white and less black. Otherwise, how do you bring in or justify the morality of your story? There's always a moral compass, always, right? And as we go along, we have to figure out what the moral compass is, what is the journey, what is this protagonist meant to achieve or culminate at, and what are the various issues he or she is going to face as they move along. And this conflict creates the dialectic, which in narrative terms is called drama. All right. Now, all dramatic conflicts, like I said, grapple with morality and values since time immemorial. I mean, if you remember the kind of stories that we've heard growing up, they were mixed with mythology and some fantasy and stuff like that. At least I was fortunate enough to hear some such stories from my grandmother as I was growing up. And most of them always, or you can look at Panchatantra or Aesop's fables. I'm sure you must have seen these as children, or read them, or engaged with them. Amar Chitra Katha was another series. So all these stories, all the stuff that we've grown up with, are primarily dealing with morality and values, right? What is right, what is wrong, what used to be right or morally correct 20 years ago, even, or I would say even 5 years ago, doesn't hold water anymore. Because slowly but surely, the diktats of morality are getting fused, are getting watered down, are getting, are getting more and more unimportant as we go along. So therefore, we have a new morality. We have a new way of looking at things. We have a new perspective of life, and you children are the ones who are changing this whole game as we go along. So nothing is so black and white anymore, and slowly and surely, that is what is reflecting in our stories. And surely, as we go along steadily, it will eventually not matter. So these will remain at the level, I think, of fables, of stories, mythology, and we will learn to accept this whole thing that antithesis is as much an equal. So the point I'm making is that the antithesis of what we know as the villain traditionally is become as important as the thesis of what we call a hero, what we know as a hero. And we are relooking at the whole thing, and the web space is one space which is exploring a lot on these stories, especially the web series we're seeing on many platforms today. We are relooking at happy endings. We are creating more plausible, believable, credible stories which are reflective of life. After all, where does art come from? Where do films come from? They all come from life. They're a reflection of life. They can be a fantasizing of life, or they can be an actuality depiction of life as we go along. Now, I want to show you a film. All right. This is a film made in Tamil, but it's subtitled, so you should all be able to see it. And I'm primarily putting this whole morality thing out there with this film, and then we can open it up to discussion or however you wish to do it.
இல்ல ஆம்பளைங்க தனியா இருக்கும்போது ஒண்ணு வேடி பத்தி யோசிப்பாங்க, இல்ல தன் லக் பத்தி யோசிப்பாங்க. நீ எதை பத்தி யோசிச்சுட்டு இருக்க? சத்தியமா பொம்பளை பத்தி கிடையாது. பொம்பளை பத்தி இல்ல, பொம்பளைங்களை பத்தி நினைச்சுக்கிட்டு இருக்கேன். ஏன்னா அவன் எப்போ அவங்களே தானே ஏமாந்துகிட்டே இருக்க.
அக்கா, அது டிவி ஆஃப் பண்ணுங்க.
தப்புதான். உங்க யார்கிட்டயும் சொல்லாம ஐ காட் மேரிட். அதுக்கு என்ன ஒதுக்கி வச்சீங்க. பட் நான் வாட் இஸ் ஹீ டூயிங்? அக்கா, இது கொண்டு போய் அங்க வைங்க.
இது சார தவிர வேற யாருமே தொடக்கூடாதுன்னு அவர்.
One sec, sorry, I think I need to put the CC on. Yeah, all right, I'll start again then. Okay, from wherever the subtitles are. All right.
தப்புதான். உங்க யார்கிட்டயும் சொல்லாம ஐ காட் மேரிட். அதுக்கு என்ன ஒதுக்கி வச்சீங்க. பட் நான் வாட் இஸ் ஹீ டூயிங்? அக்கா, இது கொண்டு போய் அங்க வைங்க.
இது சார தவிர வேற யாருமே தொடக்கூடாதுன்னு அவரே சொல்லியிருக்காரு தம்பி.
இதெல்லாம் நீ பாசம் நினைச்சு கொடுக்காது. He's cheating on you. He's having an affair, ma. Yes. நான் பார்த்தேன். காயத்ரியும் பார்த்திருக்கா. அண்ட் பார்க்க இப்ப பழக ஆரம்பிச்ச மாதிரி தெரியல. அவ்வளோ. அக்கா, அந்த போன் கால் அட்டன் பண்ணுங்க. அவ்வளோ அன்னோனே அவங்களுக்குள்ள. நானும் காயம் லவ் பண்றப்ப கூட இப்படி பழகிறது கிடையாது. இந்த வயசுல வெக்கமே இல்லாம கார்ல, காஃபி ஷாப்ல, ஷாப்பிங் கூட. அவருக்கு 52 வயசு ஆகுதுல்ல. அந்த பொண்ணுங்க நம்ம அகலியா வயசுமா. நீ ஏன் மேல கோபப்படாத. மானம் போகுது. நீ அவர் கூட இருக்காது. எங்களும் வந்துரு. நான் ஆள் போட்டு நல்லா பாத்துக்கிறேன். Just leave him and come off. ஆபீஸ் முடிஞ்சு லேட்டா வர வயசாமா அது? கூசுதுமா. நான் கிளம்புறேன். இருந்தா அசிங்கம் வேணும். அப்புறம் உன் இஷ்டம்.
வாமா. எப்ப வந்த? வீட்டுல எல்லாரும் நீங்க பேசிட்டு இருங்க, நான் வரேன்.
ஒரு நிமிஷம் பேசணும். நீ சும்மா இருமா, நான் பேசியே ஆகணும்.
இருச்சாரு, வாமா.
நீ என் வயசு இருக்குமாப்பா? சொல்லுப்பா, நீ கூட்டிட்டு சுத்துற பொண்ணுக்கு என் வயசு இருக்குமா? எதனாலப்பா? அம்மா 5 வருஷமா பெட்ல இருக்கிறதுனாலயா? ஏப்பா இவ்வளவு கேவலமா? Is that all you need? It's a bloody sex from a girl of my age?
ஏய், என்ன பேசிட்டு இருக்க நீ?
தயவு செஞ்சு அது நீ மட்டும் இல்லைன்னு சொல்லிடாத. அசோக் போட்டோ காட்டினா, இப்ப நான் அதை காட்டி ப்ரூவ் பண்ணா உனக்கு செருப்பால் அடிச்சதுக்கு சமானம். Now you're 52 அந்த பொண்ணுக்கு ஏன் வயசு? ஏன்பா பசியா? இத சொல்லுவாங்களே ஆம்பளை இருக்கு.
ஏய் ஆலியா, என்ன பேசிட்டு இருக்க நீ?
நீ சும்மா இருமா, அவ நல்லா கேட்கட்டும். 4 மூலம் கைத்துல தவனாலும் அவ பாவம் கிடையாது.
இப்படி எல்லாம் பண்ணிட்டு எந்த மூஞ்ச வச்சுட்டு அவனை வீட்டை விட்டு போக சொன்ன? உன்னை இப்பெல்லாம் நினைச்சப்பா, ஏன்பா இப்படி பண்ண? You're not my hero anymore, Dad. You're just a fucking boy. A third-rated boy.
அகல்யா, நான் சொல்றத கேளுமா ப்ளீஸ்.
Don't touch me. என்ன தொடாதீங்க.
என்ன உரிமையில உள்ள வரீங்க?
யாருமா?
தொடாதீங்க.
நீங்க யார் நினைச்சு தொடறீங்கன்னு யாருக்கு தெரியும்? நாங்க அம்மாவை கூட்டு போறோம். என் கூட 6 மாசம், அவக்கு 6 மாசம்.
மாத்தி மாத்தி நாங்க வச்சு பாத்துக்கிறோம்.
ரெண்டு நாளா அவங்க சொல்றதெல்லாம் உண்மைதான். அவ பேரு சாஷா. அவளை பத்தி இவங்களுக்கு தெரியாத உண்மை, அவளுக்கு கண்ணு தெரியாது. ரொம்ப நாளா உங்ககிட்ட ஒண்ணு கேட்கணும்னு நினைச்சிட்டு இருந்தேன். டாக்டர்ஸ் கிட்ட கூட இத பத்தி கன்சல்ட் பண்ணேன். மேக்சிமம் உனக்கு 1 மாசம் தான் சொல்லிட்டாங்க. சோ உன்னுடைய கண்ணை சாஷாவுக்கு ஆபரேஷன் பண்ணலான்னு இதுல ஒரு கையெழுத்து.
என்ன சொல்லிட்டு இருக்காரு?
எந்திரியா முதல்ல.
This is the limit.
எவ்வளவு தைரியம்!
முதல்ல அவரை வெளியே போக சொல்ல அசோக்.
முதல்ல எந்திரி.
அம்மா நீ கழுத்து போடாத. அம்மா சொன்னா கேளு. அம்மா என்ன பண்ற?
தேங்க்ஸ்மா.
This is like உடனே அம்மா கூட்டிட்டு போறோம். டாக்ஸி வர சொல்லு.
ஓகே, ஃபர்ஸ்ட் உங்க வீட்ல பத்திரமா பாத்து.
என் வீடா? முதல்ல உன் வீட்ல இருக்கட்டும்.
நானா?
திடீர்னு
காயத்ரி
என்ன
சொன்னேன்.
பேசுற? அதுக்கு நான் இங்க வச்சு நீ கிட்ட கேட்கணும். நான் மனசுல அதுக்கு என்ன? எனக்கு மட்டும் 5 வருஷமா நான் அவருக்கு ஒண்ணுமே கொடுக்கல. அவருக்கு சந்தோஷம் எங்கிருந்து வந்தாலும் எனக்கும் சந்தோஷம்தான். நான் இங்கதான் இருப்பேன். இது எங்க 2 பேருக்குள்ள. நீங்க போலாம். நம்ம கிளம்பலாம். இனிமே நீங்களே பாத்துக்கோங்க.
என்னமோ பண்ணுங்க.
இதற்கு மேல் சகிக்கவே திராணி இல்லை. மனிதர்கள் வாழட்டும், இதற்கு மேல் தண்டனை எதுவும் இல்லை. என்னை தேடி வரும் சாவே நேரம் எடுத்து என்னை கொல்லாதே. பூச்சிருந்தும் நரகம் என்றால் அதுவே சுகம்.
உங்ககிட்ட சொல்ல வேண்டிய கதை ஒண்ணு பாக்கி இருக்கு. 25 வருஷத்துக்கு முன்னாடி அந்த பொண்ணுக்கு 21 வயசு இருக்கும். அந்த வயசுலயே அவளுக்கு ஒரு காதல், வேற ஒரு மதத்து பையனோட. அந்த காலத்துல 2 பேரும் ஓடி போய் தான் கல்யாணத்தை பண்ணிக்கிட்டாங்க. அந்த சின்ன வயசுலயே ஒரு குழந்தை வேற பெற்றுக்கிட்டாங்க. என்ன பாவமோ தெரியல, குழந்தை பிறந்த உடனே அவ கர்ப்பப்பை ஈரம் காயறதுக்கு முன்னாடி அவ குடும்பத்தை சேர்ந்தவங்க அவங்கள பலவந்தப்படுத்தி அவங்க 2 பேரையும் பிரிச்சுட்டாங்க. பெத்த குழந்தைய பார்க்க கூட விடாம அவளை அழைச்சிட்டு போய் அவளுக்கு வேற ஒருத்தரோட கல்யாணம் பண்ணி வச்சுட்டாங்க. அவளே வேற ஒரு கல்யாணம் பண்ணிட்டா. நாம ஏன் பண்ணக்கூடாதுன்னு நினைச்ச அந்த குழந்தையோட அப்பா அந்த குழந்தைய அனாதையா விட்டுட்டு அவனும் வேற ஒரு கல்யாணம் பண்ணிக்கிட்டான். யாருமே இல்லாத அந்த பிஞ்சு குழந்தை ஆசிரமத்திலேயே வளர்ந்தது. இந்த கொடுமையெல்லாம் பார்க்க கூடாதுன்னு தான் ஆண்டவன் அந்த குழந்தைக்கு 2 கண்ணியை எடுத்துட்டான். அந்த பிஞ்சு குழந்தை அவங்க அம்மாவை நினைச்சு தினமும் அழும். அந்த அம்மாவும் தான் பிள்ளையை நினைச்சு தினமும் செத்து பிழைக்கிறான். இது வரைக்கும் அந்த குழந்தைக்கு அவ தாய் யாருன்னே தெரியாது. ஆனா இந்த நிமிஷம் வரைக்கும் அவ இத பத்தி என்கிட்ட எதுவுமே சொன்னதில்லை. இத சொன்னதெல்லாம் உன்னுடைய குற்ற உணர்ச்சியை புதைச்சு வச்சுட்டேன். அந்த அம்மாவும் தான் குழந்தைய பார்க்க மட்டுமான்னு இன்னும் தான் கடைசி மூச்சோட போராடிட்டு இருக்கும். உங்க அம்மா உனக்காக காத்துக்கிட்டு இருக்காங்க. என் பசங்களுக்கும் இந்த உலகத்துக்கும் இது நான் பண்ண தப்பு இருக்கட்டும்.
Yeah. Something in the chat box. It's audible. All right. Thanks. Good. All right. Okay. Now this, what you saw is classic short fiction, right? Classic short fiction is you always enter in the middle of the action. So you enter late and you leave early, right? You always leave an anticipation in the minds of the audience. And since it's a short duration, maximum half an hour, right? I mean, most this film was less than 20 minutes. And all the essentials of a dramatic narrative are there. The premise is there, conflict is there, resolutions. The only thing is you can't take too much time in establishing the characters or the setting. So you always pick it up in the middle of the action. There's always a lot of action. The drama is already palpable from the first scene onwards, right? And there's always a sense of perceived and presumed danger. There's always a sense of drama. There's always something which is going to lead up to something. So there is an anticipation built up in the minds of the audience. Instead of like in regular feature films, a lot of time is spent on establishing the characters, establishing the scenario, the environment, where they live, what is the backstory, where do they come from, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Whereas in a short fiction, you get straight, you cut to the chase, pick it up in the middle of the action, and then you take it from there. And as you go along, right, the drama keeps building up and there's an intrigue, there's a suspense element, which always engages and hooks an audience. And the plot needs to be unraveled, whatever may be the genre, by peeling it layer by layer, just as we do in thriller and horror narratives. The plot is more often than not, like you saw in this film, extraordinary things happen to ordinary people. Always, always. And there has to be a turning point, an unexpected twist in the tale as it surprises and catches the audience unawares. We all from the very beginning are made to believe that this man is having an extramarital affair with a woman half his age. But actually, he's looking out for his wife's lost child and making them come together again. So this basically is how fundamentally short fiction kind of turns the entire three-act narrative, the dramatic narrative, around and compresses it. Like we always compress time and space in filmmaking, this compresses the drama primarily, and it is not contrived. I mean, the chances of it getting contrived in such a short period of time are minimalized unless you write a really bad script and you execute it terribly. But otherwise, most good short fiction comes together fairly cohesively, and the drama is well unraveled and revealed as we go along. And at the end of the day, it does leave you with an interesting and a positively interacted or engaged with feeling. Yeah, so this, I wanted to show this to you as the primary example of what short fiction is and how this is kind of redefining conventional dramatic narratives as we've gone along. Now, would you like to ask questions now, or should I go ahead? This is something I would like to know. So whoever is coordinating may have an answer, please. There seems to be nobody. Only students, is it? Because I need to know whether we whether we go ahead now, or should do you guys have questions, or comments, suggestions, whatever. So you'd like to discuss now, or should I go ahead? Can somebody please tell me? I would like a response, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, sir, you can go ahead.
So nobody wants to ask questions. There's no doubts, no comments, no nothing at this stage.
No, I don't think they have any. I think after the end of the session, they could have something.
All right. I mean, if you're certain about that, then I can go ahead. But if somebody wants to ask something now, they can. All right, fine. I'll go along. Okay, so this basically was to give you an introduction of the market scenario, where are we at, what is dramatic narrative, and how short fiction brings the whole thing together. I hope you got it. The entire thing has made sense to you. And like I was saying, the drama isn't contrived. I mean, the chances of it becoming contrived are that much lesser, which is why the chances of engaging in a more positive, meaningful manner with the content the chances are much higher. The odds are in the favor of the genre. And as an audience, it's a fairly fulfilling experience by the end of the film. So you don't really feel that, it's only 15 minutes or 20 minutes or half an hour and not a full-length feature film, because all the required emotions and the required impact that the story and the narrative has to have on the audience is well packaged into a short period of time. All right. So like I said, it's organic, focused, and it's calculated like an advertising film. In advertising, I just want to give this as a substantiating factor here. In advertising, we normally work within 30-second timelines, right? Especially the conventional television commercial. Of course, nowadays you have much longer ads thanks to the online space. You have 2-minute, 3-minuters also, which we see a lot of these days. But just going to the conventional 30-second television commercial, those have a formula, right? That the first 7 seconds you establish a scenario, right? In the next 7 seconds you establish the drama, and you've already alluded to the product. So the conflict comes in, and in the last, in the next few seconds, you know that this is the problem with the character, and this needs addressing, and this product can address it. So then you have either a demo portion or a usage of the product, and eventually it's like, oh, from the time that this product has come into my life has changed for the better. So yeah, all is well. Similarly, we follow when you go into conventional short fiction. Of course, short fiction is not a very, very old genre. It is still only a couple of decades old, and despite that, the popularity of short fiction has only become really large in the past few years, with a lot of big stars coming into it, production values going up, funding. Earlier, most short fiction films were made either by students like you, or they were made as experiments or as showreels for people wanting to enter the film industry. But now it's become an industry in itself, thankfully. In short fiction, normally when we say premise, conflict, and resolution, you usually fuse the conflict and the premise as you start. So the premise comes through from the conflict. From the word go, the environment is conflicting. From the word go, there is a sense of drama. From the word go, there's a sense of anticipation, which the same is not necessarily, like I said earlier, required or looked upon in conventional feature filmmaking. So there is a formula here where I would say within the first 2 to 3 to 4 minutes, the drama is set up, right? In the next few minutes, you are taken on a path, believing it is leading somewhere. And somewhere, I would say, in the third act, by the time you're hitting the third act, you start realizing that maybe you've been taken up the wrong path, and this is not what you're watching, but actually there's something else. And then eventually, in the last couple of minutes, it's a slap on your face. And you say, oh, damn, this is what is actually happening, and I was thinking something else. So there is a formula in the writing. There is a formula in the execution. Of course, every film does have different duration. So accordingly, the calculation and the timelines change. And it's not necessary that you have to follow what I've just said. You can always turn it around, right? You can always backward integrate. You can start from the beginning, you can start from the end and go back to the beginning. And that really depends on your style and the requirement of the story. But primarily, just like in advertising, there is a formula in short fiction where you have to make the audience believe in a certain storyline. You have to engage them, give them anticipation, create the drama, and just as you start getting involved with the drama, you start empathizing with or not liking or disliking the primary protagonist. There's a twist. There's always something where it's like you expect the unexpected, but you never know when the unexpected is going to come to you. So this is another very, very important factor when it comes to short fiction and how it works and how it is crafted or put together. And of course, the more the drama or the more the intensity of the dialectic, the more the tension and anticipation in the audience's mind, right? Will the protagonist overcome the various conflicts? Will they make it? Won't they make it? What will happen? So on and so forth. And it has to eventually appeal to you emotionally. It has to appeal to you at a very, very fundamental level. And if it appeals to you at a fundamental level, then definitely the film has worked, the story has worked, right? Okay. Now, I want to show you a film here before I take the discussion further. This is again a short fiction film. This is a short fiction film with kind of big stars or well-known actors from the Hindi film industry. It's a film called Juice. And this, I will come to the reason why I'm showing you this film once you see it. Yeah, I'm going to play this for you. Just give me a minute, please. And just as before I go along, I definitely would like more interactivity in this so that at least I know that you're getting it and, and there is definitely a takeaway. I would appreciate if I would have more responses from you all out there. Thank you. All right.
अरे जिस दिन से वो आई है ऑफिस सिस्टमाइज्ड हो गया।
अरे छोड़िए कहाँ का सिस्टम।
अरे सब कुछ झटपट हो रहा है, देखिए ना।
अरे सुनिए तो सही, 1 घंटा इत्मीनान से बैठ के मैडम को सब समझाया, बच्चे की सब बड़ी बात खत्म हुई तो तपाक से बोलती हैं ईमेल पे सब भेजते।
इसमें प्रॉब्लम क्या है?
अरे सर भरना गया हमारा।
भाई साहब इसको एक बात बताइए, आपको तकलीफ किससे, ईमेल से या फीमेल से?
भाभी डोंट माइंड।
सुनिए कांता, तकलीफ तो जबरदस्ती के चोंचले से है। हालांकि हमने इससे पहले कभी आपत्ति नहीं जताई, पर हमें तो पहले से मालूम था कि मैडम का जो अपॉइंटमेंट हो गलत सही। क्यों भाई, रोड वेज की भागा दौड़ी, धूल धूप, ऑफिस का टाइम बेटा कहाँ से समझेगा?
क्यों नहीं समझेगा?
भाई साइंस के मुताबिक आदमी और औरत की शारीरिक संरचना में फर्क है कि नहीं?
संरचना क्या बोल रहा?
अरे संरचना गूगल कर लीजिए।
अरे भाई बातों का बाजार गर्म हुआ कि नहीं अभी?
आपके बिना गेट टुगेदर में जान
भाभी नमस्ते।
नमस्ते।
कुर्सी लपकिए।
हाँ
कैसे हो भाभी? हम बिल्कुल ठीक है। अच्छा हुआ तुम आ गए, हमें तो लगा नहीं आओगी।
अरे कैसे नहीं आएंगे भाभी, और वैसे भी घर में रहकर करती है, यहाँ रहेंगे तो कम से कम आपका हाथ बता देंगे किचन में, है कि नहीं? और भाभी बड़ा बढ़िया बढ़िया सीख रही है आजकल रेसिपी, देखिए कुछ बनवाइए। अरे भाई बनाओ। हाँ तो क्या संरचना, क्या बात हो रही है?
संरचना संरचना पूछे।
बंगाली है, बंगाली
चले की घूमने गया था। घूमने?
अरे अल्लाह भाभी ने हरकत मचाई कि नहीं? अभी कहाँ, तुम्हारा ही वेट कर रही है। नमस्ते भाभी। नमस्ते रजनी, कैसी हो? बस बढ़िया, सुंदर लग रही है रजनी। जो आ गया है। हाँ सोट वोट के लड्डू भेजी कि नहीं मम्मी ने? हाँ अरे अभी तो टाइम है भाभी, समझ लेना। हाँ क्या बना रहे हो भाभी? कचौड़ी का आटा गूंद रहे हैं। बड़ा मन हो रहा था मेरा खाने का, चटपटा खाने का भी मन हो रहा होगा। कर गर्मी ऐसी पड़ रही है, ऐसा लग रहा है रसोई एकदम भट्टी हो गई है। एक मिनट, वो एक पंखा है तो ऊपर रखा हुआ, हम अभी लगा देते हैं। पर बच्चा वो कुर्सी तो ले आओ दौड़कर।
ज्यादा चीटिंग मत करो, वरना आंटी को जाके कह दूंगी।
जाओ कह दो, मैं भी तुम्हारे पापा को बोल दूंगा।
क्या कह दोगे कि तुम होमवर्क के बहाने वीडियो गेम खेलती हो? अब तो तुम भी करते हो, तो वीडियो गेम मेरा है।
अरे और जब एमएलए साहब की अम्मा को दौरा पड़ा था तब क्या हुआ? हाँ पंडित जी, तब वही फॉर्च्यूनर लेके उसी रोड से भाग के गए थे क्योंकि अस्पताल के लिए सबसे शॉर्टकट रास्ता वही। लेकिन ये मदर का हार्ट अटैक कब हुआ? नहीं, हार्ट अटैक नहीं हुआ, पेचिस का दौरा पड़ा था।
पेचिस में दौरा पड़ने जैसा क्या है?
अरे सिंह साहब, पेचिस में तो बाखूबी दौरा पड़ता है, हाथ पाँव फूल जाते हैं। अरे पेचिस माने क्या? पेचिस माने डिसेंट्री था।
सुनो सुनो, ओ शुक्ले, हमने तो नहीं सुना कि पेचिस से दौरा पड़ता हो।
चप्पल पहनी हो ना जी? क्या हुआ? अच्छा इसे दीदी, हाँ ये ठीक रहेगा। अरे बाबा, पानी की बोतल किधर है? क्यों ला रही है? तो उधर कनेक्शन में कोई प्रॉब्लम तो नहीं? अरे रुकिए, मैं बर्फ लाती हूँ।
ये बताइए, इतिहास तो पढ़े हैं ना?
आप पढ़े?
अब बताइए, सम्राट अकबर की मृत्यु किस प्रकार हुई?
लड़ाई वड़ाई से हुई होगी, किस प्रकार?
तो वो मृत्यु को प्राप्त हुए पेचिस के दौरे की वजह से।
अरे क्या बोल रहे हैं?
हाँ,
सम्राट अकबर डिसेंट्री।
सुनिए सुनिए, वो पंखा नहीं चल रहा, जरा ठीक कर देंगे?
आ रहे बताते हैं, तो महल में मंदिर बना रखा है और वही नमाज पढ़ता है।
तो भाई जो अकबर थे वो बड़े चतुर थे, ये सब एमएलए जैसे थोड़ी ना थे।
एक और कप देना वहां से जी, पर्वत की। ये लीजिए। हाँ थैंक यू। अभी बहुत देर हो गई दीदी, हम जाते हैं। चाय तो नहीं। उबाली, अब तुम अपना नंबर लगा ही लो। क्यों? हस्बैंड वाइफ के बीच में कुछ नया बचा नहीं? बस बच्चा पता कर दो। सही कह रहे हो, हमें तो अभी से डर लग रहा है। अब बच्चे को पालना बड़ा करना आजकल के टाइम में कितना मुश्किल होगा ना। अरे कितना बड़ा इमोशनल और फाइनेंशियल इन्वेस्टमेंट है ये सब अंग्रेजी में सोचना ठीक लगता है। लव मैरिज वाली हो ना तो अभी ठीक है, 4-6 साल के बाद सूनापन लगने लगेगा। जब मियाँ बीवी दोनों बूढ़े हो जाओगे तब कौन सहारा होगा? अच्छा, क्या गारंटी क्या है कि आपके ओल्ड एज में आपका बच्चा आपके साथ रहेगा? बच्चा है कि फिक्स डिपॉजिट? अरे ये नहीं कि हस्बैंड वाइफ एक दूसरे का साथ दो और इंडिपेंडेंट भी रहो। इंडिपेंडेंट रहना अच्छी बात है, अपने हिसाब से जियो, अपनी मर्जी से जियो, लेकिन बगैर बच्चों के कैसे? हम 1 महीने से ऑफिस भी नहीं गए और अभी कह रहे हैं कि डिलीवरी के बाद तुम रिजाइन कर दो। दिन भर बच्चे में ही लगी रहोगी, ऑफिस जाने का तो वक्त ही नहीं मिलेगा। अब हमें ही देख लो ना, मंजू भाभी को देख लो, नौकरी तो छोड़ी ना, तो जरूरी है जो हमें करना पड़ा वो ये भी करें। अपनी मर्जी से नौकरी छोड़ना समझ में भी आता है, पर ये कौन सी किताब में लिखा हुआ है कि या तो बच्चों को पालो या नौकरी करो, दोनों एक साथ नहीं कर सकते हैं। मतलब भाई डायपर बदलना है तो वो तो हम ही को करना पड़ेगा ना, लोगों के हाथों से तो रिमोट छूट जाएंगे।
हो जाता है ये क्या?
देख नहीं रहे हो तुम क्या? बच्चे आ जा रहे हैं यहाँ पर, अंदर कमरे में रखो उनको।
राहुल
यहाँ मत लाओ,
रुको यहाँ पर, चलो कमरे के अंदर चलो।
वही मैं बोल रहा हूँ।
यहाँ अंकल लोग बातें कर रहे हैं ना। डॉली डॉली डॉली। हाँ मम्मी। थाली लग गई है, भैया लोगों को खाना खिलाओ। 1 मिनट। बहुत खेल रही हो, तुरंत आओ। अभी आइए देखते।
तुम लोग हॉल में क्यों जा रहे हो? हम नहीं थे।
चुप करो। जब अंकल लोग ऐसी बातें कर रहे होते हैं तो पीछे मत जाओ। कभी हमें देखा जाते हो पर फिर वही बात। अब जाओ ध्यान से।
वो अमेरिका में जितने इंडियंस है ना वो सबको भगा दे, फिर को ही बोलोगे ना।
तो ओबामा ने क्या उखाड़ लिया? हाँ, और वो क्लिंटन हुआ की बीवी क्या नाम है, हिलरी, ऐसा क्या नया कर देती है शुक्लवा?
आई एग्री विद यू।
हाँ,
आई एग्री विद यू। ट्रम्प भाई एकमात्र ऐसा आदमी जो अमेरिका में जान लाएगा वापस। रॉन्ग फॉर अमेरिका। अरे दादा, इस हड्डियों के बलबूते कौन सा देश चला है आज तक, बताइए।
थालियां लगा दो। उधर तो है।
This is another aspect which has been redefined, challenged, and relooked at in short fiction. Short fiction has given the woman a voice, has given the woman a space, unlike conventional cinema. Even today, if you look at conventional cinema, films that are supposedly blockbusters, most women don't have much to do. It's all the hero story. It's a completely male-dominated, machismo-oriented narrative, and the women are just kind of fillers, are just there to sing and dance and be the love interest and nothing much more. Unfortunately, it is still in existence in a majority of the films. Some films, yes, today, especially in mainstream cinema, some films, yes, are taking cognizance of the female characters. But short fiction is one space which has kind of given the woman control, or given the woman the right to say that I also exist, that I am a person in myself. I have my own identity, and I need to be given my space, right? So this really comes from us, and I mean India. I mean, as a society, we've perpetuated the mother image and the depiction of women in our cinema forever, since time immemorial. And she has to be accepted as a heroine. She has to have all the makings of a morally upright, strong character who's willing to sacrifice all her love for her family, for her husband, for her children, and so on and so forth. One who shall maintain her dignity and the family's honor at any cost. We saw that in this film, and yet remain unappreciated and unacknowledged once she is wooed or married or whatever, right? This attitude, although unacceptable as it is discriminatory, unfortunately still reflects the status of a majority of women in our society, which is why women today want to reclaim patriarchal spaces. All the women's movements across the country in recent times exemplify and reflect this. Short fiction puts the woman in control of the narrative despite all the conflicts, all the opposition, and all the drama. So that is another good thing that has happened, the way the narrative has been redefined, where also it's probably because most short fiction films don't have big budgets. Most short fiction films don't have the time and the space to really establish heroics of a conventional machismo-driven narrative. And most short fiction films seem to reflect reality from a much up close and personal kind of perspective, which really is been very, very positive for the way women are depicted in these films, and for women coming into their own as people, and not just as props, or not just as additives, or not just as suppositories, but as real flesh and blood, and people who have emotions, people who have lives, and people who need to be counted, and people who matter. So this is yet another aspect of the dramatic narrative in the short fiction, genre, which has had a very positive impact on female characterization. Stories are written around women, and of course, at the end of the day, the real hero is the woman and not the man. All right. Anyone want to ask anything, say anything, or should I go on to the next? I have one more film to show, and then I'm going to wind up and open it up for questions. So if anybody wants to ask anything right now, fine, or should I go ahead? Anyone? Any answer? Any question? Any opinion? Anything? Any doubt? Nothing?
No, sir, no questions right now.
All right, fine. Okay, thank you for responding. All right. I'll ask one. I mean, I'll show you one more film. Some of you might have seen some of these films. The reason I'm showing you these films is just to make you understand the perspective of the or the point of view of what I'm trying to eventually get across to all of you. Yeah. Okay, fine. So let's watch one more film. This is the last film I'm going to show you. After that, I will wind up and then hopefully take some questions from all of you. There's a film called Devi. This has Kajol in it and a whole lot of other females. It's obviously a good budget production. Okay, let's play this.
तुझी टीव्ही आली काय तुझी राणी आली माझा राजा
ऐसे केस के बारे में बात करने जा रहे हैं जिसे सभी देशवासियों में संयम को तोड़ के रख दिया। हालांकि ये केस केवल 2 ही दिन पुराना है, लेकिन लोगों का गुस्सा आग की तरह पूरे देश में फैलता जा रहा है। हम यहाँ इस वक्त इस केस के विक्टिम के घर के बाहर खड़े हैं। हमें अंदर जाने की परमिशन नहीं मिल पा रही। इस केस को लेकर देश की जनता कई महत्वपूर्ण सवाल खड़े कर रही है। पकड़े गए गुनहगारों को राजनेताओं का समर्थन क्यों मिल रहा था? आखिर इस तरह के गुनाह बार बार क्यों हो रहे हैं? साल दर साल सुरक्षा व्यवस्था में किसी तरीके का सुधार क्यों नहीं हो पा रहा है? पूरा देश इस वक्त अपनी
टीवी बंद करो, बंद करो.
देवा आता हेच बाकी होतं.
माशी प्लीज सगळ्यांचा मूड ऑफ नका करू.
इथे सगळे लोकच ऑफ आहेत. मूड तर ऑफ होणारच ना.
ऐसी बेतुकी बातें करके क्या मिलता है आपको मौसी?
मौसी सही तो कह रही है. Saying way too hot for me here.
हॉट? ऐसी खुली जांघों में आपको गर्मी लग रही है? मेरे बुरखे के अंदर तो कबाब पक रहा है.
What? Jango.
Guys, जी आप जाकर देखो ना, इनका तो चलता ही रहेगा.
चलता रहेगा? कब तक चलता रहेगा? एक ही तो ढंग का कमरा दिया है हमको. आता एका रूम मध्ये किती लोकांना घुसणार?
कितनी बार कहा है धूप बत्ती के बाद झगड़ा मत करो ना.
पण तू धूप कशाला लावते? बाई इकडे कोई देव नाही. हाँ
केबल चेक करायला गेलाय तो.
मैं आप सबकी शांति के लिए.
तो शांति बनता है ना. वो लड़की को अंदर नहीं आने देने का बस. इधर सबकी आत्मा को शांति मिलेगा. आता काय डोक्यावर बसवायचं का काय तिला? ये
तो वो कहाँ जाएगी? कहाँ जाएगी वो? यहाँ एक सिस्टम की जरूरत है. हर कोई यहाँ नहीं रह सकता, वरना किसी को तो बाहर रुकना पड़ेगा ना.
पहली बार कुछ अक्ल की बात की है इससे.
जो अभी आए हैं वो बाहर रुके, हम क्यों जाए?
हाँ?
यहाँ की आबादी बढ़ती जा रही है आरजू जी. टीवी से तो लग रहा है हर रोज कोई नया आएगा. कितनों को बाहर बैठाएंगे?
सबको. वो हमारे क्या लगते हैं?
हम सब एक दूसरे के क्या लगते हैं? जो भी साथ रह रहे हैं ना. हाँ, किसी ने कुछ पूछा थोड़ी. सबको यहाँ बकरियों की तरह चूस दिया बस. इतनी सारी लड़कियां रखेंगे कहाँ सबको? दी आपने यहाँ कोई धर्मशाला नहीं खोल के रखी है. प्लीज आप इसको अपना टेंशन मत बनाओ, वो अपना खुद देखेंगे. एग्जैक्टली ज्योति, यू आर आल्सो विक्टिम.
आलं सुरू यांचं इंग्लिश.
मुझे इंग्लिश ही आती है. आप लोग मराठी मीडियम हो तो इट्स नॉट माय प्रॉब्लम.
मैडम जी हम कभी स्कूल ही नहीं गए. 12 साल में शादी करा दी.
इसलिए तो हम नीचे बैठे और कुर्सी में झूल रहे हो तो बैठो ना, आओ बैठो इधर। मैंने कब मना किया आप लोगों को? बस भी करो। आप फिर बाहर कोई रुका है, हम उन्हें क्या जवाब दे? ये अंदर बाहर वालों को बंटवारा कैसे करे?
जिनके पापा भाई हस्बैंड ने किया हो
वो इधर रह सकते हैं, अपन सेफ है भाई।
Not me.
मेरे तो रास्ते के मवाली थे। तो फिर उम्र से करते हैं। जिसका भी 25 से कम का था वो अंदर बैठो और ना बाहर जाओ।
तेरे को मालूम था ना मेरा मर्द 50 का है बड़ू, मेरी मरकटी
42 का था।
55 और 2 थे, कुल मिला के 110। तो मैं क्या घर चली जाऊं? या तो फिर जिस तरीके से हम
ये भाई चीटी नहीं चलेगा, तुझे तो जितना जला दिया था। शी
जला डालो। आप सब गला गला बियर बॉटल से फिर हाईवे पे फेंक दिया। पत्थर से, छुरे से।
मेरा हादसे से नहीं, उसके बाद सदमे से हुआ था। तो तू बाहर जा। मैडम, इधर किसी को रोने का भी टाइम नहीं मिला था, तुम्हारा तो सबसे आसान था। दिखता ही चाहे बाहर जा।
मौसी, छुरी नहीं चली, खून नहीं बहा, इसका मतलब ये नहीं मुझे दर्द कम हुआ था या तकलीफ कम हुई थी।
बोल रहे हो आप?
You're so mean.
देखो रुला दिया ना।
She such a sometimes.
ये भी इंग्लिश बोलती है और कम से कम मुंह पे गाली देती है। तेरे जैसा नहीं।
मावशी काय चाललंय तुमचं? तुम्ही सर्वात मोठे आहात ना, तुम्ही समजून घ्या।
ये तू कौन सी एग्जाम की पढ़ाई कर रही है तो तू कब भी देने वाली नहीं है? अब असली मुद्दे पे ध्यान दे।
आपका मुंह देखने से तो अच्छा है ना कि मैं मुर्दों की शक्ल मुंह देख लूं।
ये अभी लक्ष्मी चल चला उल्टा। हाँ हम बाहर जाएंगे।
जाओ 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 जाओ, बाहर जाओ, अभी जाओ, उसको लेकर जाओ।
बस बस, कोई कहीं नहीं जाएगा और जो आई है उसे भी कहीं भेज नहीं सकते। जितनी जगह है उसी में एडजस्ट कर लेंगे। वहां भी तो एडजस्ट ही कर रहे थे ना। यहाँ थोड़ी भीड़ में रहेंगे, लेकिन उन हैवानों के साथ रहने से तो बेहतर है। ठीक है, लेकिन मैं अपनी गद्दी शेयर नहीं करूंगी बस।
श्रुति प्लीज को क्या
किसी ने कुछ उल्टा सीधा कहा तो मेरी 1 हफ्ते के लिए रिमोट है ना?
याद है हम जब आए थे तो कितने डरे हुए थे।
नमस्ते बोलो सबको।
भारत में हर 22 मिनट एक महिला का रेप होता है। 2018 में थॉमसन रॉयटर्स की स्टडी के मुताबिक महिला सुरक्षा के मामले में भारत सबसे
Right. So here I was only substantiating what I was talking about, the female's perspective, female's issues, and this whole perpetuation of the mother or the Devi image and the way it's being relooked at and redefined today. So basically, just going back to certain fundamentals, we, thanks to short fiction, are grappling with more real, more plausible stories. Thanks to short fiction, we have kind of redefined the narrative to a large extent, wherein audiences are regaled with more drama in shorter periods of time. Audiences are engaging with better. There's a question here. I'll answer your question. Let me finish what I'm saying. Let me just wind up. And we are getting to see a different perspective on many issues. We're getting to see different narratives, the protagonists, especially women, coming into their own, and far more intensely dramatic and intensely engaging narratives are coming out from short fiction. Of course, today, short fiction does coexist with everything else in the online space and otherwise. If you notice, there's one more spin-off of this whole thing as far as genres are concerned and applications or distribution or exhibition of content is concerned, is that in the web series space, you notice that similar formulae are being applied to web series today, especially the longer ones, which are about 40 minutes, 45 minutes episodes. There's a lot of, they are like hybrids of conventional cinema, and they're using the dramatic plot points and the dramatic narrative structure of a short fiction. And it is not unlike television, where soap opera just goes on ad nauseum, ad infinitum, it never ends. Whereas in the web series space, there is an anticipation and drama definitely built up, otherwise you will never come back, or you will not binge watch the series. But having said that, every episode in itself is an end. Every episode in itself reaches a dramatic high point and ends there. So there's a definitive, just like in all good scene writing, in all good screenplay writing, every scene must have a definitive beginning, middle, and end. In the web series space, they make sure that despite them being, continuous episodes of a series or a story or characters, journeys of characters, every episode is kind of an end in itself to a large extent. So like I see a lot of very interesting fusion in the writing and the execution happening in the web space, which is taking from conventional cinema and kind of redefining the structure and writing more the way a short fiction film would be written, which is also why there is so much more drama, it's so much more palpable, and it is so much more continuous. It doesn't necessarily give you a breather or give you a break. Because one thing always leads to another and so on. Of course, even in the web space, a lot of really very, very badly made shows, which is everywhere, right? I mean, we have good content and bad content everywhere. And India lives in many centuries, right? We have the rocket and the nuclear bomb and the bullet cart that exist and coexist. But having said that, these interesting changes are happening in the narrative space, in the writing space, and in the execution space for us to, engage with better storytelling, more dramatic storytelling, definitely, and more compulsive storytelling at some level, which kind of keeps you hooked and keeps you engaged and keeps you entertained, also well informed. So yeah, this is basically what I wanted to talk about. This is basically the perspective that I wanted to give you. Now I'm open to interaction, questions, comments. I did see some question. I would like you to read the question out. Whoever the gentleman is who sent the question, it'll be easier for me to respond to you. Could you please speak the question out? And whoever wants to ask me a question, let's just open up your microphones, put on your cameras. It'll be great if I can see you. If you can't put on your cameras, open your microphones up so at least I can hear you and we can interact. Yeah.
Nilabjo, if you're there, if you can unmute yourself and ask the question which you have posted.
Yes, sir. I was just asking that, so you told before that, in the end of the short film, mostly there's a plot twist. It is it's mandatory. But what if, we use the plot twist at the beginning of any short film or any show, kind of it's going to be what the stereotypical format we follow. So is it dramatically correct or not, sir? That's what I asked.
Most certainly. Look, nothing is mandatory. It is what has happened over a period of time. This is the way the short fiction narrative has evolved over a period of time. I'm only an observer and a teacher, right? So it's not mandatory that the twist has to come in the end. But if the twist comes in the end, it leaves you with a better dramatic experience. You want to bring the twist in the very beginning, and I said that earlier, you can always turn the whole thing around. You can start with the resolution and lead up to the premise. I said that at the very beginning. I don't know if you heard what I said. I said that earlier. It doesn't matter how you do it, but this is how primarily, I'd say, most short fiction films have been following this pattern. So I'm primarily talking about that. So that's how it's been going, right? You start with something in the middle of the action, you take it to a point, and then you start believing a narrative, and then suddenly there's a twist, and there's always an unexpected turn towards the end. So this is a conventional format which has been followed. You want to bring in the twist at the very beginning? Surely, certainly. But just make sure that there is enough drama for the audience as you go along towards the end of the film. That's all. So there's no right or wrong.
Okay, so thank you, sir.
Right. If anyone else has any questions here, our students who are joining us either in online mode or are there at the campus, if you have any other questions for sir, you can go ahead and unmute your mic, or you can come to the podium here and ask him. So we'll just give it 2 minutes. Let's see if anyone asks. If not, then I have a question from my end, which I'll present to you.
Surely.
So my name is Angshu. So I want to ask you something that can we start a film with an intense scene? When we start a horror story, okay, like a horror story, it always starts with suspense, or it starts with a very casual, a woman is getting into a house and all stuff. So if we do something from the beginning only, it's very intense. The color grading is too dark, and the scenes are more horrible or creepy kind of stuff, or intense from the beginning of the film.
Right.
So
you're done with the question?
Yeah. Sir, is it possible? Is it
Why
possible?
Not? Why not? Anything is possible. It purely depends on the requirement of the story. It purely depends on the journey of your character. As long as it can be organically integrated into the story and the storytelling, you can make anything you want the way you want to make it. Who's stopping you? In fact, all the 3 films I've shown you do start off fairly dramatically, despite being not over the top from the very beginning. So you want to make it more creepy, more horror-like. If your story and your storyline and your characters justify it, Why not? Most certainly, you can do exactly as you please, as long as it is coming from the story and it is fulfilling the requirement of the story and the character's journey. If you're going to topo something from the outside, it's not going to work. See, never ever predetermine your form. First, predetermine your content. Your writing has to be good. Your writing has to come together. Your writing has to make sense. Your writing has to backward integrate. Once all those things are in place, there's a balance in the script, there's a balance in the plot points, the journey of the characters are well plotted, and there's enough conflict to see you through. Once you've done all of that is when you start thinking about form. If you're going to start writing, keeping form in mind, then form is going to dictate your narrative and not the content. So you will have to keep justifying your content to suit the form, whereas it should be the other way around. All good writing comes from good content. Form is secondary. Unless you've decided to make a science fiction or you've decided to make something which is justifying the kind of thing you're asking. If you're going to go with the predetermined form, then you've got to go with the predetermined content to fuse with the form from the very beginning of your writing. Only then will it make sense as you go along.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, anyone else? Any other student wants to put any question forward to sir?
So I had a question. Can I go through with it?
Please go ahead.
So, yes, sir. I wanted to ask that what do the audience find most amusing about a character? For instance, as you said, all the characters, they're not black or white. They're in the middle gray area. So is it that we find amusing that a hero is slowly turning into a villain, or a villain we find, relatable to, we can relate to, like the Joker?
Very simply putting it, Tiyasha?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Very simply putting it, any character that appeals to your senses, anything that touches you emotionally is a character which works. It can be the Joker, it can be Dracula, it can be Shah Rukh Khan, it can be Soumitra Chatterjee, it can be just about anybody. It doesn't matter who it is or what character they are portraying. The character has to emotionally appeal to the audience and has to be integral or integrated, like I said earlier, and I'm going to keep saying it. There is no two ways about it. The plot and the characters have to be integrated in the same storyline. They both have to be given significant amount and equal amount of justice, equal amount of space, and equal amount of canvas to be able to play in. After all, they're players. They're all playing, right? If you're making the film, they are playing in accordance with what you're writing, what you're directing, how you're making it, how you want them to play, right? So and remember, for a filmmaker, you are the first audience always. So whatever you've written or whatever you're watching or whatever you're making has to first appeal to you. If it doesn't appeal to you, it's not going to appeal to anybody. You're your first benchmark. So whatever you're making or writing, first you see that, okay, is this emotionally appealing to me? Is it making sense? Is it something I wish to engage with? Because at the end of the day, any film is going to take you through a certain period of time where you wish an audience to be engaged. So there is no formula to this. Since you asked me, what kind of character appeals? It depends on three things. Firstly, how well defined and how emotionally appealing the character is. A, B, what kind of expectation you as an audience have from the character, and how much are you going to allow yourself to suspend your disbelief. Suspension of disbelief is a fundamental need of any audience. Suspension of disbelief is that we know that something like this is not plausible, but because it's part of the journey of a character and we are compassionate with the character, we will believe anything. It's like a hero fighting a tiger and overcoming the tiger, which is impossible in real life. A tiger slaps you, your head will be off your neck if you do it, right? But in movies, heroes fight tigers or whatever, something fantastic like that. And we, despite knowing that this is unreal happening, we still want the hero to overcome the tiger and to emerge triumphant. And because we believe or we are compassionate towards the journey of that character. So we should not allow our prejudices to come into while we are viewing something. We should be open to anything. We should be open to the yin and the yang. We should be open to the thesis and the antithesis within us. And we have to allow things that hurt our sensibilities at a level of acceptance to become acceptable. And the moment they become acceptable, it becomes so much more easier and so much more enjoyable to engage with the story or the journey of a character. So there is no, like I said, there's no formula, but it has to be real, plausible. Even if it is fantastic, it always has to be credible and plausible, the characterization of any character. So yeah, which is why the Joker was bizarre, but the Joker worked. In recent times, there's this movie which has been like raking in the bugs called Pushpa. I don't know how many of you have seen it. And the guy Allu Arvind or Allu Pushpa is quite a bizarre character in that film. But the film has been wrapped up. So it depends, right? I mean, like there was a film last year or last year, which I think it was called Kabir Singh, which is again a remake of a South Indian film. This chap, Shahid Kapoor, was the hero. I found that film abhorring, personally, right? But it was a big hit. It worked at some level, despite it being misogynistic and really disrespectful to women. It worked. So you never know what may be appealing to a mass audience. Is it something which is coming from within, or is it something you aspire towards? Really, that's that gray area, that very nebulous area of engagement. Because watching something as a passive audience, we can live our fantasies out vicariously through any narrative or any kind of story structure, and we don't have to tell anybody about it. So there is that anonymity when we watch a film of any sorts, whether we agree with the morality of the film or not, or whether our society around us or conditioning around us allows us to agree with it. We can always agree with it and enjoy it. We don't have to go talk about it. So it really depends on your own personality type, your own background, experiences, prejudices, so on and so forth. And then, of course, you've got to find the lowest common denominator, where the character has a universal appeal. The character has universal characteristics, which can appeal to a large audience, because films are made for large audience. I hope I've answered your question. I've said a lot of things, but I hope.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah?
It was
All right.
perfect. Got it.
Yeah.
Sir, there's another question. He can't unmute his mic, but he has posted it saying, can a filmmaker give a question his audience to solve at the end of the film through curiosity?
Most certainly. Most certainly. There's this film many years ago called Sleuth. I was probably younger than you guys. And it has only two characters. Michael Caine was one of them. And I forget who the other guy was. And they both are in this maze, which is created for them inside a house. And the whole film leaves you at the end of it with, like, what the hell just happened? So there is a lot of, you are kind of involved into unraveling the mystery that is created in the narrative. Most certainly, many films are made like that. And they don't necessarily have to be detective stories or mysteries. They can be straight narratives, which just leave you like, what the hell happened there? You don't know what the ending was. It's either an open ending or this unexpected ending, which kind of leaves the audience foxed. If you look at some of the films of, I don't know if you've seen Jean-Luc Godard's cinema, or if you've seen some of the East European films, many of them just leave you with no real culmination of the story. They're like open-ended. And you don't necessarily know like what happened to that character eventually. Where did he or she go? So certainly you can leave things open. You can leave questions open. But then you have to know what your target audience is. You also have to know whether your target audience will like or appreciate the kind of film you're making, unless you're just making it as an experimental esoteric exercise. But the moment you come into a commercial space, and the moment you say, all right, I want to sell this, then you've got to be a little careful about how the market works. That's all. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, students, for your time as well. Thank you, sir, for your time. I would now like to introduce Devabani ma'am, who's the HOD of Media Science here at
I thought you had a question to ask, sir.
Sir, my question was answered partially when you were answering Tiyasha. So I thought that it just touched along. So let's not extend that.
Thank you.
Thank you, though, sir. Thank you. I'll just hand it over to Devavani ma'am for the closing comments here.
I hope this was useful for the student. That's I don't know whether it was.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
I'm very sure that they had a lovely session. And my esteemed colleague, Professor Anvesh Thakur, who was coordinating the session, has a background film studies from Jadavpur University and is into this kind of making films and documentaries. So I'm sure he has personally engaged your session too. So the students, on the other hand, I can see some very happy faces because this is an area where a group of people are very interested and maybe another group is interested into something. So the interested part has really participated, and I have heard you before. So I don't have much to say about it, but then I'm very glad, and iLead Kolkata is very glad to have you here as a resource person and on the webinar. Basically, I would like to also add that films, documentaries, short films, these are not kind of sessions on virtual mode. These are certain things, you can show them the films, but expression, more little bit of an acting into it, you need to be physical. So as I discussed with you, we are going physical from March 1. Will be physical. So I will be looking forward to bring you all the way from Delhi to Kolkata to have a week-long workshop with the students. And also, it would be great if you can give a certain opportunity to the students who are interested to work as interns. As they want to unwind themselves, they want to learn. So it will be a great opportunity for them. So as of now, we sign off, and I wish you a very good health, and do stay connected till we bring you.
Certainly.
Thank you, and stay happy till the time we bring you on board as a physically for a week-long seminar.
I will. Thank you so much. You too.
Thank you, Baritone sir. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you. Yeah. Bye.